Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our second Caring for Vulnerable Children Google Hangout, coming to you live from the University of Strathclyde. Today we're putting your questions to Graeme McPhee and John Paul Fitzpatrick, as well as reviewing the course content so far. Please feel free to ask questions using the Google Hangout question bar, and we'll do our best to pass along as many of your questions as we can. You can also post questions on Twitter, use the hashtag FLChildren. And now, without further ado, I'll hand you over to hosts today, Graeme McPhee and John Paul Fitzpatrick.
Hello, welcome to our Google Hangout, the end of week 4 of Caring for Vulnerable Children. I'll introduce myself first. Most of you will know who I am by now. I would guess Graeme McPhee. I'm the lead educator on the programme.
And I'm John Paul Fitzpatrick, and you won't yet have experienced me, but you will be in the following weeks.
Got that to look forward to in live and 6 material. What we're going to be doing today is kind of having a bit of a chat about the progress of the course over the first 4 weeks, in particular trying to respond to some of the questions and comments that have been posted to us. We'll get quite a lot to try and work through.
And it's brilliant that people have been contributing questions already, and for anybody that is watching live, don't forget to pose your questions on the hashtag, which I have temporarily forgotten.
FLChildren.
FLChildren is the one that you're reading. Well, we kick off with one of some of the sessions that we have.
Yep.
We've got a very interesting one from Angela McIntosh. And Angela is asking, I'd like to ask how enthusiastic are social work managers embracing these concepts at a time when austerity is demanding financial stringency. So when they seem to be more stimulating, challenging and rewarding to the worker and beneficial to the child, implementing them is likely to be more expensive than a tick box system. So Angela making some real issues there about the points which pressures which are impacting on professional practice and the supports that are available. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess what we're reading into the question is in week 4, obviously we had some material on different types of practice, and particularly thinking about a few, I guess, international examples. Child and youth care, which traditionally come from North America, social pedagogy, different ways of thinking about how we can think about children, respond to them, services for children and young people. So when Angela's asking about how much thought do we think has been given to different models of practice, and I guess from our experience at the university and with CELSIS and working with a lot of our partner organisations, there's lots of examples of, well, we're talking about the UK here, there's lots of examples of agencies thinking about and engaging with different models of practice. Social pedagogy, for instance, there's a whole variety of different organisations that are engaging with that in different ways. Other agencies thinking about a child and youth care perspective. But I think it'd be fair to say that those it's a patchwork in a sense in terms of kind of what exists kind of up and down the country.
It varies in a Scottish context, vary from authority to authority in terms of their professional perspective, their budgetary situation, the interdisciplinary makeups of the teams that they've got. Multiply that across the kingdom, multiply that across the globe, and you've got a plethora of different systems in different countries. And I'm sure you, in terms of your situations, as you go through the course, you'll be relating it to, I wonder what it's like. I say, if you're not connected to professional practice, have a look, try and find out, do some Googling, get to try and find out what the pressures are. The one thing I would say, Angela, to your point, is that the austerity can actually force collaboration because people have no money. So people are compelled to work together. So it also has the potential to put pressure on people to innovate, to share ideas, to use the experience of people and to use the skills and to really, I mean, that's all very, very positive, as long as you're always putting at the forefront of your mind what is in the best interest of the child.
And I guess just picking up on a particular bit within the question, Angela, you made the comment that some of the approaches, the likes of social pedagogy and child and youth care, and you say they seem to be more stimulating, challenging. rewarding to the worker. I think that some agencies take that view. That's why I know a lot of agencies that are engaging increasingly with social pedagogy. It's because of a belief that it's a truly child-focused, strengths-based approach that really has the potential to put children and young people and their needs at the heart of the system and try and create a set of responses that is child-led, as opposed to kind of something that's potentially more punitive or resource-led or something such as that. So I think the answer to your question is we do see examples of that happening, but it very much varies from setting to setting. John Paul said it kind of sometimes varies according to resources. In many organisations, it varies depending on kind of key individuals within organisations who embrace or are willing to invest in a certain approach. But we could link this question into kind of some of the other ones that we've had, and if we
yeah, well, sorry. Yeah, I'll just talk over you.
if we jump down to Kim Boatwright, Kim, thanks for posting your question. And you ask, is there any particular childcare system in the world that has a hugely successful child development ratio for vulnerable children? Are all systems facing the same challenges? And that's interesting, because going back to why we can go from country to country, we can go from organisation to organisation. We see different organisations buying in to different approaches, training their staff and kind of taking different perspectives. But you, I guess the simple answer was, if there was one approach that was felt to be hugely successful over and above, we would probably all be doing it.
Yeah, in fact, you and I would bottle it and we would sell it and make a fortune from it. I mean, no one common approach. And actually, that's the strength of child and youth care, of social work practice, of community learning and development, all these different fields that are aligned, huge service and huge contribution to make. And I think that rich tapestry of our worlds that we think is what makes it so exciting, and gives you the opportunity, as you study the material, to look at practice from elsewhere. But there is no one best approach.
Yeah. I've said that in a UK context, there's probably been engagement with psychology and child and youth care in the last 10, 15, 20 years than there's ever been. I think part of the reason for that is an attraction to some of the things that those models of practice that are felt to have to offer. And thinking about links to the material this week, especially kind of thinking about social pedagogy and its focus on risk competence as opposed to risk management, and that being attractive to a lot of kind of practitioners in terms of almost challenging some of the risk averse stuff that we see. And obviously the participants have seen the input from Ian this week talking about that very issue. So the short answer is that there is no kind of panacea to this, but depending on who you speak to, different people will make different arguments for different approaches. But we've certainly seen a bit of a sea change in Scotland and the UK over the last 15 or 20 years, and perhaps a bit of a kickback against some of the risk averse measures.
That and the culture of bureaucracy and managerialism, which kind of pervades that we live in, and I suppose that poses a direct threat and potential challenge to the biggest asset that we have, which is that of our time to give, our time to invest in communities, our time to invest in individuals, to provide quality support, to provide care, to build capacity for communities and individuals, and finding the solutions to their own problems and are age and stage appropriate. I mean, that's the biggest plea in terms of social work. Time, social work practice is the challenge of that pressure of caseload, the demands of workers, the pressures in the system, and just that not actually getting the fundamental time to build quality and caring relationships. So I suppose my appeal to put back to all of you watching this is whatever you're setting that you're working in is, always have that at your mind, always find ways to create the time, and don't let that the challenges of the system get to you, because just remember what drew you to click on this fantastic learning experience that you're on was probably your belief and interest in supporting vulnerable children and learners. So keep that as a driving force and keep that at the forefront of your mind, no matter what set you're in. How can I make a difference? How can I continue to fight against the systems to make sure that I am personally investing that time in and understanding, create good quality relationships? That's my rant over for the day, Graham.
But let's link that into, we were looking over some of the comments that Jenny Malloy's material got this week, and it'd be fair to say that anybody, the pages associated with Jenny's material, the overwhelming kind of positivity of comments about Jenny's input, and people across us feeling really energised and inspired by what they were listening to in relation to Jenny. And I'm making a connection there because Jenny was advocating a way of being with children and young people, especially children and young people that are in the care of the state or kind of local authority in some way, and was advocating with those children and young people that perhaps would be challenging to some others. And she was talking about the role of love and relationships and the belonging and such like, and the things that we would like all children to be experiencing as they're growing up. And so alongside all those positive comments, there was some interesting comments that we pulled out. With kind of one from Emma O'Brien asking about the in terms of that contact and feeling the belonging, kind of where do we draw the lines? And then she asked a question about kind of what constitutes a child. She makes a comment about giving a cuddle to a primary age children, for instance, and that feeling easier and safer than teachers, for instance, and kind of where the boundaries are drawn with that. And I think that's something that many professionals working with children and young people, that those are issues that they're constantly managing in terms of what feels right or what doesn't.
What's appropriate, what are appropriate levels of touch and contact in a setting, and there are also all the issues. There's been a lot of high profile cases in the media which cement thoughts around abuse and raise awareness of abuse, and then people that become then more kind of policies that inhibit any form of touch. Or actually, one of the biggest challenges, and I think this is a point that's made by Moira at some point in your learning experience.
Week 3,
so that happened 3 weeks ago. This time travel thing that we do is incredibly. But Moira making the point about touch and people assuming that there are policies in an institution that prohibit touch, when in fact there are no policies. It's almost an urban myth that's held amongst workers. I mean, so I personally, thinking back to my own practice, I've worked in youth work for 15, 16 years of professional practice before coming into academia, and I frequently would give children, young people a hug and just that normal kind of level, healthy, safe levels of contact to show them that they're cared for and valued and supported. And it's just getting that balance right, depending on your situation, the setting, the person's age, and your own organisation's policies, and being aware of your own professional boundaries.
But is that the challenge? Because thinking about Jenny's input, Jenny's very clear about what she really did was she knew she was cared for. She knew she was loved. There was adults who were involved in caring for her in terms of how they were around about her, how they were with her. They made it absolutely clear what was communicated to her, that was that unconditional love, which is what we would want for all the children. We had another comment from Irene Drew. Thanks for your comment, Irene. He said, this is how it should be, children in care. But she says, unfortunately, it isn't. And lots of kids get lost in the system. And the sad fact is, again, in a Scottish and UK context we are talking about, we know there are lots of young people who, after leaving, well, both during their time in care and after leaving care, tell a very different story to to that told by Jenny in terms of kind of not feeling claimed, not feeling loved, not feeling that the benefit and the security of relationships. And so we, as inspiring as it is to hear Jenny's story, and actually that's why Jenny is so vocal telling her story,
to try and create change and awareness.
So there's a real interesting challenge for us to think about kind of how do we, despite some of the concerns, despite and that there's this notion as well about, we talk about professionalism and boundary, and I sometimes think we get those terms mixed up, and it acts as a battle. I can't touch children, I can't give them a hug, I can't tell them I love them because in some way it's crossing a boundary or it's unprofessional. Well, why? And so I guess a strong theme this week has been just trying to encourage the participants to think for yourself and begin to unpick, well, how should or could we be the vulnerable children and young people that end up in the care of the state?
Absolutely. Just because a rule is there, does that rule make sense? Did that rule make sense 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Is that a rule that's for where we are now as a society? So yeah, we're going to just put it right back at you in terms of having some critical about what is your perspective on it, and keep challenging you to, as you engage with the material, keep thinking, well, what would I do in that situation? What would I do in the situation of working with Billy's family, for example? So just, it's good to be provocative and to think these thoughts. That's the whole purpose of engaging with academia.
This back to the comments we got in relation to Ian's talk. Ian was talking about some of the challenges involved in practicing in a culture that I mean, this is again a theme that's run throughout the first 4 weeks of the course, but are we operating in a risk-averse culture and kind of some of those challenges? And there's a really interesting comment from Michael Richards. So thanks for making your comment, Michael. And almost the comment starts off quite humorous. He says he's a foster carer. And he talks about being a foster carer. It doesn't name it as a foster carer, but saying sometimes you get a bit frustrated by some of the rules and boundaries that his employer puts around about them in terms of rules about what they can do and what they can't do. And actually makes the comment, I was encouraged by my employer to do this course, and I'm actually quite surprised now I was encouraged to do it, because I'm now actually being to question some of that stuff in relation to this doesn't make good kind of practical sense. And I think back to it, we not kind of sitting advocating that people cause trouble just for the sake of causing trouble, but there's a bit about kind of questioning the systems, the care that we provide for children and young people, and kind of speaking up both for them and with them and about them, so that we can try as much as possible to ensure that children and young people get the care that they deserve. So it was interesting to see that Michael reflect upon the fact that being part of the course and thinking about some of the questions raised, I guess especially by Jenny and Ian, are causing him to reflect on his own experience of being a foster carer and some of the rules and boundaries that surround that. Are these actually, are they good common sense? Do they help me care for children and young people?
Yeah, we're interested to see, Michael, if they continue to recommend the course after challenge them, but keep challenging and keep asking and keep making the links. That's brilliant. That's exactly what it's about. So to your own circumstances and thinking and asking the difficult questions. Good on you.
And then just on Ian's page as well, we had I think again a real interesting comment from Nicola Gold. So Nicola, thanks for your comment. And Nicola works in the residential childcare centre, and she talks about kind of sometimes experiencing a bit of a dilemma, where she talks about how she describes it, being stuck between management and the young people. So that the sense of, I guess, kind of young people placing one set of demands on you as a worker in terms of kind of what's the most appropriate way to respond, and then being provided with a set of messages kind of coming the chain of command, so to speak, from management, and a worker sometimes experiencing a bit of a dilemma within that in terms of how best to respond.
And that's so common. That is absolutely common. It certainly chimes with my professional practice. Graham, I'm sure you'll think back to your own professional practice, and having been, in terms of residential childcare, having been a worker and then making the transition into to management of a residential childcare home, and then of course hat on, being able to see that in terms of what the theory says, and all those there's tensions at every level. I think that's healthy. I think it's brilliant. And do you know why? Because I think it shows evidence that you're alive and that there's critical thought taking place, and that you're experiencing those tensions. And again, going back to that best interest principle of what is in the best interest of the child, because quite often they have no one to, they're dependent on you for that advocacy role, and questioning policies if they don't make sense, but always getting into the discussion and using his vision within the setting to get into the debate and the dialogue and the discussion. So, I mean, that's so common though.
Yeah, and I think it's the asking the question that's the important point, because what we would never aim to do here is sit and attempt to offer solutions to particular scenarios. I don't think that's possible, and that's not our role. But the recognising that often workers at different levels will experience that tension in terms of this sense of the wishes and desires of the young people, their own particular assessment of what's in the best interest of the children and young people, and then perhaps agency policy or managerial directives or whatever kind of pointing at something else. And certainly, we're both involved in kind of thinking about material where workers experience a tension where something can be implemented by an organisation, and it will be implemented under the banner of being in the best interest of the child or looking after the children, but actually some assessment can be, this is actually the organisation looking after itself, and actually what it's doing is just shutting down certain avenues of activity or ways of thinking about things, and they hide behind that it's in the best interest of the child, but it's actually, and you'll hear phrases like it's back covering and such like, and an organisation's just not letting certain things happen for children and young people. So, I mean, just to kind of give you some kind of illustrative examples, there will still be, and again in Scotland and the UK, there's still many children's residential units, kind of access to the internet and Wi-Fi is still kind of very kind of governed and managed in a way that wouldn't be common for a lot of kind of children and young people, and organisations will hide behind, well, we're keeping the children safe because the internet can be an unsafe place and different, and so we manage it by just not allowing them access to the internet. And
which is almost like becoming a fundamental human right in terms of access to information. And
certainly in the UK context,
yes, of course,
yeah. So, but I think it's a good example of, is that really about keeping children and young people safe, or is that just like an easy response to, and then we have to manage the complexity of, well, what happens when young people do use the internet and perhaps use it in an inappropriate way or to access things that they shouldn't, because that's where the real learning should be, not in terms of kind of saying we're never going to let the internet access the internet. It should be we're going to work alongside you to help you understand kind of safe ways of using the internet and what it's okay to do and what we would rather you didn't do, and allow them to develop that competence. So making the link back to social pedagogy, for instance, operating competence model, whereby we encourage young people to become competent at making decisions for themselves about what's appropriate or not, as opposed to as an agency or a set of adults saying we're just going to manage that for you. Because
where's the learning for the individual, and how do you grow? And they're not all
so some nice examples.
And the other one that sprung to mind, and only because I know that Dr. Ian Milligan was heavily involved in a Scottish context, which was looking at the guidance around me, and all the things that we take for granted, perhaps in our own childhoods, about play and going out and exploring environment and learning from different situations, such as kind of water rafting, etc., and how the culture of managerialism over the last 20, 30 years has meant that groups of children don't get to experience that because there's red tape, because these activities are deemed too risky, and therefore that contact with the external environment and a wider world in any shape or form is denied. So there's another example there. Ian has been fairly prolific in a Scottish sense of being, as most Scottish people are generally, you've probably picked that up, quite outspoken and challenging the guidance and trying to create change and say to staff, get children back out and engaged with their environments, live in and experience a wider view of the world. So yeah, it's just another example of what we've done.
And I know that whole issue, when I reflect back on myself working in residential childcare and thinking about the things that we routinely did with children, kind of building tree houses, halfway up trees, kind of building rafts down rivers, different things. And I do wonder about the freedom that many staff would have to engage in those activities. Now, I think some of the more forward-thinking organisations, and perhaps, I wonder, kind of linking this back to your theme of social pedagogy, in terms of kind of thinking about how social pedagogy can perhaps free people up to think in a different way about the way we manage risk. We got a couple of questions from Janet Jones. So Janet, thanks for your questions. The first one, Janet asked a similar question to one that we cited earlier on. She asked about, is there conclusive evidence which approach is most successful? Because a strong parallel with one of the earlier questions that we had, but she says, the more I read about a social pedagogy approach, the more I like it, but it's my feeling that this is the most effective approach borne out by positive results. Now, I think it's important that we kind of keep this in context, and I guess I'll declare my interest. I'm a big fan of social pedagogy, as an increasing number of people in Scotland are. But as you'll get a sense from the material this week, social pedagogy has emerged out of kind of a number of kind of mainland Western European countries, and the way social pedagogy has developed in the different countries is very, very culturally and context specific. So what we are not for a second saying is that social pedagogy has got the potential to fit everything in Scotland, so should we pick it up and drop it down in Scotland and it's going to solve everything, because it has evolved in the countries where it's practiced. So countries such as kind of Germany, kind of Holland, Denmark, different places where there's a strong tradition of social pedagogy.
And it's linked both to their individual cultures, but also has been implemented in a way that it literally transcends 0 to 25 and beyond, and is ingrained across professional disciplines, so that they're all being trained in a common understanding of social pedagogy, whether they are in a childcare setting, whether it's residential care, youth, teachers, they're all coming at it from a very similar value base. And some of the kind of fairly high profile failures of social pedagogy in terms of more critical, for example, down in England, whereby there was a report published about 4 or 5 years ago, where an implementation of social pedagogy didn't work. That was just because they tried on a small scale to lift those ideas, as you were saying, Graham, and transplant them, and it didn't work. And it didn't work because it wasn't taken into the whole context of all the professionals working around the children, young people, coming at it from a common value base, standing, and that needs to be the case for it to really work and be transformative.
And so coming back to your question, Janet, that I increasingly find that as kind of working with students and other childcare professionals, I increasingly myself talking about the value of social pedagogy informed practice. And my reason for kind of thinking in that way is to encourage people thinking about what could some of the principles and ideas with social pedagogy, how could they inform practice? But our starting point has got to be where we're at culturally as a country, as a kind of range of services, and and influence things from there. Kind of social pedagogy exists in different forms in different countries, and so I think, and I mean, we would encourage it. I mean, some of the links are already there in the material, but kind of thinking about organisations such as Tempra, the Social Pedagogy Development Network, easy for me to say, that I encourage people to kind of access some of their materials and kind of see how they're thinking about how social pedagogy could gain more of a hold in Scotland and the UK.
Or indeed, share amongst yourselves the comments. What are your own experiences if you know that social pedagogy is being practiced as well? Maybe take the opportunity to share some of the learning with your fellow course participants, and just post a comment about any reflections you have about it. I think that maybe takes us to the point whereby it'd be worth having a quick look at Billy's situation this week. We've got a comment in from and Lisa is observing that she finds Billy's situation complex and worrying. It's good that Stephen and his guidance teacher, he's got them to talk to. They're offering him security, respect and understanding, and I feel like looking out for him. I'm worried that the funding will be cut and Billy will lose out to the valuable relationship that he's got in place with Stephen, and just reflecting that would be awful for Billy in his situation. So yeah, Lisa, I think it's really interesting points. I think your observations and concerns for Billy's situation are well founded. I think your observations of the levels of support that are in place for Billy are very important as well, and that varies, that security, that having someone to talk to and relate to in terms of respect and understanding is absolutely crucial. But Graham, what do you think of Billy's situation this week? Where are we heading?
So I guess it's from looking over the comments, the comments highlighting high levels of concern for Billy. I commented 2 weeks ago. I was kind of updating John Paul on kind of some of the chat 2 weeks ago at the Google Hangout. I'd made the comment 2 weeks ago. I was surprised that not more people were making comments and making the link between if we're seriously concerned with supporting Billy, then supporting Billy's wider family network, but especially his mum in this situation, is perhaps one of the best ways to support Billy. I see that coming through as more of a theme in the comments now, but with a fair few comments saying, well, why can't we just get resources for Billy's mum, and then that'll help solve the problem? And there's a bit that it doesn't kind of feel necessarily I don't feel happy saying it, but no, Billy is a story, we should make that clear, but it's very much based on a reality. There will be hundreds, probably thousands of families out there kind of experiencing the sorts of things that Billy family are. And in a UK context just now, repeating what I said 2 weeks ago, sadly, Billy, in terms of resource allocation, would not be a high priority. Now, I'm not necessarily defending that, and I'm just reflecting that's my assessment of kind of where it's at. So that in terms of kind of Billy's fictional scenario, I would agree with the points that have been made about that. It's really encouraging that we can see evidence of some supports been in there via Stephen, the youth worker, and Mr. Merton, the guidance teacher. But as we saw towards the end of this week's episodes, things are really challenging. Mum is struggling, and we hear that she's not always making work, and we know as a kind of a single family on a kind of single wage, if there's problems there, that will have a huge impact on the family. We hear Billy at the end making the comment to Mr. Merton, she doesn't really talk to me, so mum is one of is Billy's biggest protective factor, but things are getting in the way of mum being able to engage in that relationship. So there's concerns and protective factors in equal measures there. And I think, Lisa, it's really important to highlight that we hear that the advocacy group that Stephen provides the support via if there's questions about funding and support there, and again, the reality, a lot of these community-based support groups, these are the organisations that are experiencing, in a UK context, real squeeze and funding.
Under threat and probably most likely to disappear because of that very reason, that the intervention is almost at that lower stage and therefore not mandatory as perceived by the authorities in terms of intervention.
Yep.
But it's great that people are identifying these challenges and issues and keep letting us know what your thoughts are as they are.
And just another comment round about Billy, I think it's important to, well, it would be good to call up Susan McCool made a comment. Susan, thanks for your comment. And again, you can highlight that complexity and the fact that there's no easy answers in these sorts of cases. They're saying that I'm pleased with the evidence of the relationship with Stephen and some of the supportive stuff, but I'm worried about kind of some of the other developments and in many ways, that's the task that's involved in trying to support vulnerable children and young people. That there's often no easy answers, and one day look as if kind of things are settling down, and then the next there'll be kind of more set of circumstances. We were probably getting to the point where we should think about wrapping up. We've got two kind of comments that I want to make a point of responding to Brian Combe, and Brian was talking about social pedagogy and the potential for, he was talking about a future course focusing on social pedagogy. Again, the same as what we were saying to Janet earlier on. Click on some of the links and especially on the materials around about social pedagogy, thinking about either the Social Pedagogy Development Network, Celsius, they've got some social pedagogy materials, Tempra, that website link is there for you, and there's a whole range of kind of social pedagogy material to look at. We should also say as well, Brian,
he's a job interview, didn't he? So hopefully went well.
Yeah, he's not because he's had a job interview today, so we've got our fingers crossed.
We were thinking
so I hope you're watching this back in a cheery state. And finally, we had a comment from John Connolly. Now, John is. I'm not totally familiar with my time zones. He says it's 4 o'clock in the morning for him at this point. So I'm guessing he's in Australia, New Zealand, or somewhere. So he's not watching this live. He'll be watching the recording, but he asked the questions. You would like to know our thoughts on Billy and what would be best practice for his situation. And I hope you don't take this as a cop-out, John, but we've still got 2 weeks of the story to go. There's a fairly big development happens next when we do our final Google Hangout at the end of the course. A big focus of our discussion is going to be about what happens for Billy over the next 2 weeks, and this whole kind of question of kind of what might or might not in this situation. So we'll answer your question in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, we don't do spoilers, John. We're not telling you what's coming up.
So but we will get to that, but that's us got to time. So thanks very much for the questions that were posted. Thanks very much for your comments. And I think we've had just over 24,000 comments so far. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Keep engaging, and get ready for your questions for the next Hangout. But yeah, keep that peer support going. Keep debating, keep questioning, and reading and hearing your comments.
Well, thanks very much, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, John Paul. And thanks to everybody who tuned in today and sent your questions. The next Google Hangout will take place in week 6. From all of us here in Glasgow, thank you and goodbye.